Thank you very much, Murada. To the other participants who are online, good morning, good afternoon. Well, I don't really have much to say based on the fact that quite a number has been said by those who've spoken before me. And I do hope everybody is getting me. Now, in terms of the subject matter that we had for discussion today, I would like to start by pointing out the fact that at least today we are gathered here for purposes of wanting to understand the extent to which devolution or fiscal decentralization has been implemented in Kenya. And of course, the kind of lessons that you can borrow from the same, including one, what others can borrow from us, and two, what we can export as lessons to other countries that are probably interested in the manner in which devolution has been implemented in Kenya. But that notwithstanding, I must also make the point that one of the greatest successes of devolution in Kenya is actually the fact that we are implementing devolution. It is a concept that was very new as of the time as of the time that we promulgated our constitution in 2010. But then the effective implementation of devolution started in 2013. And we have to appreciate the fact that in one election cycle, after the first elections that were conducted in 2013, under the 2010 constitution, we must appreciate the fact that in one election cycle, we were able not only to transfer functions to the county as stipulated under the 4th Schedule Part 2, but also we were able to put in place structures aimed at facilitating the transition from centralization to the kind of decentralization that is contemplated under the Constitution of Kenya 2010. So tied to that fact is equally an appreciation of the fact that even as we transition from the centralization that came with the earlier constitution, there has not been immense disruption in terms of service delivery, whether in terms of services offered by the national government or services that are offered by the county governments by themselves. By that notwithstanding, it is not that devolution has not been without challenges when it comes to the practice of devolution or fiscal decentralization in the context of Kenya. It has quite a number of challenges. And those challenges, as pointed out, include the fact that some of these challenges are strategic in nature, they're operational, they're institutional, and of course also funding. Quite a number of discussions have gone into a few of these elements. The CRA presentation has touched quite a bit on funding, and Wanjiru has also elaborated on quite a number of the operational issues that are afflicting devolution, such that therefore we've not been able to have devolution as ideally we've not been able to realize devolution or fiscal decentralization as contemplated under the Constitution of Kenya 2010. But we must also be alive to the fact that devolution by itself, in terms of the practice of Kenya, it has not necessarily been implemented, or we've not necessarily transitioned fully by observing the four corners of the law when it comes to the manner in which we've gone about it. And I'll give an example. Back in 2013, when counties clamored for full transfer of functions, if you looked at the Constitution of Kenya, and for those who've had a moment with it, you clearly get to understand the fact that the Constitution actually contemplated a phased transfer of functions to the counties. But in 2013, what we did was to do a bullet transfer to the counties. And for me, I had an experience which was a bit interesting at that point in time. In 2013, I worked for the now defunct Commission for Implementation of the Constitution of Kenya, CIC, which was a constitutional commission basically set up for purposes of ensuring that the Constitution of Kenya is implemented as provided for under that particular document, including overseeing processes relating to the implementation of the system of devolved governance. So at one point in time, at that point in time, I worked for CIC, but then at some point in time, while still working for CIC, I was transferred. I was seconded to the Council of Governors. So when while still at CIC, while still at CIC in 2013, we advocated for ensuring that when it came to the transfer of functions, we had to really stick to what the law intended and what the law proclaimed. But then when I moved over to the COG, for purposes of trying to set up the institution in 2013, basically my secondment was for purposes of setting up that particular institution. The governors, as congregating under the umbrella of CAG, the COG, they insisted that the functions must be transferred, and all of them must be transferred in terms of the 14 functions listed in the 4th schedule, part 2 of the Constitution. So when I say that devolution, I mean, at times it is not necessarily that we have insufficiency of legal and regulatory frameworks for purposes of implementing devolution. But at that point in time, we operated on the basis of belief and faith that, notwithstanding what the Constitution said, counties would be able to take up on all the 14 functions and actually deliver on them. And that's why I go back to the point that I made earlier, which is that, yes, one of the biggest successes of devolution right now as we speak is actually the fact that we are implementing devolution, and we've not really witnessed immense disruptions when it comes to the implementation of devolution. So that by itself is laudable. It's something that we have to appreciate. It's something that we can feel good about. And it is actually something that other countries can borrow from us. But also going back into some of the elements, I mean, trying to look at some of the challenges that have afflicted the implementation of devolution, and also trying to offer maybe general insights on what some of these challenges entails, from looking at them both as a challenge and some of the success issues that can be put in place for purposes of ensuring that we get out of those challenges and devolution remains on course as intended, as provided for in law, and actually makes meaningful benefit to the local citizens of Kenya, depending on where they are locally or in which county they fall amongst the 47 counties. Now, things like on-source revenue. I've participated in several studies commissioned by CRA on how to look into how counties are able to finance the operations. And it is also very, it was a bit disheartening to see the presentation done by the other presenter from CRA, indicating the fact that the counties that have not even, rather than move forward, are actually regenerating when it comes to, I mean, they're actually degenerating when it comes to the manner in which they're able to collect revenue. They're going below that which was even there during the time of the local authorities. So counties should be able to ensure that they're able to come up with strategies that will occasion them more revenues. The funding from the national government by itself has been a bit erratic, and it has not really been sufficient in terms of, it might be adequate, but not sufficient in terms of fully ensuring that the functions that the county governments have, or rather are assigned, I mean, it might not be enough to ensure that they're able to deliver on those functions, but as a way of trying also to bridge that gap, it would be very important that they look at ways in which they show up their own revenues. But at the same time, it is also very important that they are able to ensure that revenues at the local level are tied to service delivery by itself, so that the citizenry are able to associate and say that, well, for the fact that I've been able to pay this, then there's there's a corresponding service that I'm able to get from the county governments in terms of the money that I have paid. Things like planning, budgeting, and those are things that the county governments also should be able to ensure that as we go about our planning and budgeting, we're actually planning and budgeting with the results in mind. It is not a formality. We don't plan as a formality. We don't budget as a formality. We budget with clear intentions, with clear programs in mind, and clear objectives and clear results equally in mind. The program-based budgeting, as advocated for under the PFM Act, it is important that not only we realize that, but we ensure that it is part and parcel of the budget process with clear objectives in mind and with clear results equally in mind. So the linkage between planning and budgeting, that is an area that has not really been fruitful in terms of successes, but there's quite a lot that has also been achieved by the county governments when it comes to planning and budgeting. It is incremental, but there's still a lot of work to be done, in as much as there's equally a lot of gain that have been realized by these county governments in the course of planning and budgeting and all related processes. So we must actually plan for results. Financial accountability and prudence. Yes, we've seen quite a bit of reports from the Auditor General. We've seen quite a number of reports from the control of budget. It would be very important that we're able to follow through on some of the recommendations that are made by the control of budget. We should also be able to follow through on some of the findings that are made by the Auditor General when it comes to the manner in which finances are actually spent at the county level. This by itself should be able to reinforce the ability of the people of the residents of the county to not only interact with the county, but also have confidence in the fact that for every shilling that they give, or for every shilling that is collected in the form of taxes, then the reality is that it is properly planned for, it is properly budgeted for, it is accounted for, and most importantly, it is put to use that ties to some of their aspirations, to some of the needs that they actually point out to the county governments in the course of public participation. So public participation also should not be a formality. It should not just be a process that is conducted for purposes of ensuring that you look good. No, it should be a process that is conducted for purposes of genuinely interacting with the people, but most importantly, ensuring that in the course of that interaction, they are valid results that you are yearning for and are actually attained, and there are equally feedback mechanisms that that the people can relate with in terms of actually following up and finding out whether it has been done or it has not been done. If it has been done, well and good. If it has not been done, too bad. But then what are the reasons for some of these things not being done? Rather, maybe 2 more minutes. Okay. Then we must also be able to look at the institutional and regulatory framework that is in existence. Without going so much into details around that, we must basically ensure that the institutions that have been put up or set up for purposes of ensuring that devolution functions, it is critical that not only do they function, but it is equally critical that they operate in a manner that is free, in a manner that aids, facilitates, and give credence to devolution. They need not to be stifled. We've seen counties clamoring for things like regional economic blocks. We know I participated in the formulation of the policy, national policy and regional economic blocks. That policy is stuck somewhere. There was reference to it by one of the panelists. It is stuck somewhere, but by itself, it would have been very important that counties are given the leeways to come up with other additional institutions that would basically aid in ensuring that not only services are delivered to the people at the lowest level possible, but of course also following up on alternative platforms for investments that add to the manner in which they deliver to their residents. There is also need to manage, politics of the day, where to a very large extent, the politics have been accommodating. The politics, national politics, regional politics have been accommodating of devolution. But still, it would be very important that we do a lot more. Political will, very essential. Institutions like the Senate, institutions like the National Assembly, institutions like IBEC, and all those other institutions, they should operate in a manner that facilitates rather than stifles devolution. There should not be competition. The county assemblies, for instance, they must be able to ensure that they work in a manner that does not stifle devolution. The experiences recounted by His Excellency Governor Kivutha Kibwana, very unfortunate as it is back in 2013, it shows you what some of the, it basically points a very glam picture of what can go wrong if actually institutions don't get to work together for purposes of ensuring that they attain that which they're supposed to do. And lastly, I know Muratha is really giving me that one look of, you have 30 seconds to go, but Muratha, 1 more minute, please, 1 more minute. Okay. So we must also be able to look at the management challenges that are afflicting devolution, ensure that we have the right personnel in office, enough resources to implement devolution, put in place capable institutions, both at county and national level, to enable their growth to enable the growth of the counties in line with their local needs and things like that. Then the last thing that was put to my good friend Wanjiru Gikonyo, maybe she missed it, the roles of other institutions like the judiciary. I will not say much about it, but it had been put to her. But the judiciary has played quite a significant role in ensuring that devolution remains on course. There are quite a number of moves that were made by centralists. Let me call them centralists for purposes of this discussion. Okay, and when I talk of centralists, we must admit the fact that there are people who saw this devolution as being disruptive, and for the fact that they saw it as being disruptive, they would have loved to cling on to things that they used to do or things that they used to do in the context of a former constitution. They could not relate it with the new constitution. So the judiciary has come in handy for purposes of ensuring that some of those actions or some of those moves have consequently been declared unconstitutional, null, and void. And to that extent, it has very much contributed to the kind of jurisprudence that quite a number of scholars interested in the Kenyan practice of devolution can actually look into and understand what some of these institutions can do for purposes of bettering the process of devolution. Thank you very much, Madam.